We're overlooking the Jordan River Valley, and behind us is the city of Jericho. Alongside is Israel Highway 90 that stretches all the way from the north to the south of Israel. What I'd like to do is begin a teaching here, just going through Luke 17 through 24, because I believe that it's relevant for us to understand today. So imagine, if you will, Yeshua and the disciples leaving the Galilee, Luke tells us, coming through Judea and Samaria, which this road does. It comes through the West Bank, which is modern day Judea and Samaria, and then staying here, spending some time here before they go up to Jerusalem. And if you continue on Highway 90, just on the other side of Jericho, it intersects with Highway 1, which goes up to Jerusalem. So they spent some time here and then went to Jerusalem. But I believe this is a really important point, this spot, for Yeshua, for Jesus, for all of us to understand what it is, what was on his heart, and how these last days played out. So just across the way, there's a baptismal site called Qasr el-Yahud, which is the place believed to be where Jesus came from the Galilee to be baptized and then went off into the Judean wilderness. So let's take a look at Qasr el-Yahud and see how these things begin to come together. So we'll drive on Highway 90 and pass Jericho on our right, and in about 8 kilometers we'll come up on the signs for Qasr el-Yahud, the Jordan River baptism, and we'll make a left and head east for about 3 kilometers until we get to the river and the site itself. First, we'll come to the gate for Qasr el-Yahud, the Jordan River baptismal, and then about 1 kilometer past that, we'll come to a church called Qasr el-Yahud, which means the palace of the Jews or the castle of the Jews in Arabic. There are about 9 other monasteries and churches in the area, all commemorating Jesus' baptism. But as we get closer to the site, we can see the Russian pilgrimage residence and church and Baptism of the Lord monastery, which are on the Jordanian side of the river. And then as we enter the site, as you see these people do, and many thousands do every year, the site has many places for people to get baptized, and many come every year to commit their lives and keep the commandment of Jesus to make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, as you see these people here continuing the tradition these thousands of years later. So from here we can begin to look back 2,000 years and follow the events of Jesus and the disciples these last days of ministry and get the heart of the moment on the journey for the establishing of God's plan of redemption for mankind. So imagine Jesus and his disciples have just come down from the Galilee. They're probably here in Jericho, just about 10 kilometers away, spending the night. And I can just think of Yeshua, thinking of his original commission, where he was sent out by the Father, which would have been right here. And what happened then, and how that fit in to where he's at now in this point in time. When he did come down from Galilee and he did get baptized by John in this place, it says that, Matthew chapter 3, that the heavens opened up, that the Spirit descended on him like a dove, and then out of the heavens came a voice that said, "This is my good and beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased." And then Yeshua went off to the wilderness of Judea, which is about 20-25 kilometers from here. He had a confrontation with the enemy. And then for 2 or 3 years now, he's been in ministry, he's been teaching about what's going to happen to him, teaching about deliverance, teaching about how to lay hands on the sick, pray for the sick, preach the kingdom. And now here he is, having taught for all this time. And he's with the disciples here getting ready to go up to Jerusalem, but they had just been in Caesarea Philippi, maybe a week, maybe 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks before. And what happened was, he asked his disciples in Matthew 16, he said, some say I'm Elijah, some say Moses, some say a prophet. Who do you say that I am? And Peter spoke up and he said, you are the Messiah, the Son of the living God. And Yeshua said to him, Peter, you've heard rightly. You didn't hear from flesh and blood, but you heard from my Father. You heard from the spiritual realm. And then he goes on to explain, again, how he's going to come up to Jerusalem, how the leadership is going to take him, and they'll judge him, they'll crucify and kill him. And Peter again speaks up and he says, no, Master, far be it from you. This can't happen to you. You're our king. You're the Messiah. I just heard. You can't die. And Yeshua looked at him and he spoke right to the spirit and he said, Satan, you are an offense to me. Get thee behind me. Now he said that because the plan, he couldn't get off the plan. This was the way he needed to go. The disciples for 2-3 years now, they hear him, but they don't really get it. It says that their hearts were darkened at times. Their understanding was darkened. So then he takes Peter, James, and John a few days later up to a high mountain, it says, and there they saw him glowing. His garments were bright and shining. And then they saw Moses and Elijah with him, and they were so awestruck, they said, let us make 3 booths. We'll make one for each of you. You can rest here. You can be comfortable here. And then a bright cloud descended, and a voice came out of it and said, this is my good and beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased. Hear him. So here's an amendment to what was heard here, what the Lord said here, what the Father said here. He's saying now, you must hear my Son. So in these final days of ministry, as they leave this place, as they leave Jericho and continue on the ascent to Jerusalem and the plans and the purposes of God, that he's going to work through his Son, that everyone hears him, that we discern his voice. And you'll see that over and over again. And we're going to take the Talmud, we're going to take Jewish commentaries, Josephus' history, Roman historians, and specifically Bible prophecy and Isaiah fundamentally, and show how things continue to happen in cycles, but we must hear correctly. It's all important how we hear, especially now with the times we're in, these times of judgment that seem to be upon us. We need to hear the Lord correctly. So I invite you to stay with me over the next weeks. We'll continue our ascent to Jerusalem through the chapters, through 17 through 24. I pray that it blesses you, and until that time, may the Lord make his face to shine upon you and give you his peace. Shalom.